Hey guys, tonight we begin with a little journey back in time. Not to a world of shining castles, heroic knights, and perfectly tailored fantasy costumes. No, we're visiting the actual Middle Ages, a place where surviving until next Tuesday counted as a respectable achievement. Personal hygiene was more of a hopeful suggestion than a daily habit, and almost everyone smelled like a damp wool blanket that had been left beside a stable. So, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let your mind drift. If you're already tucked into a warm bed with a pillow that doesn't contain straw, congratulations. You're beginning this adventure in far greater comfort than nearly every person will meet tonight. As always, there's no need to stay awake until the end. If you fall asleep somewhere between muddy village roads, smoky cottages, and medieval dinner tables, then we've done exactly what we hope to do. Now, let's quietly step back about 800 years. The first thing you would notice isn't the castles. It isn't the knights. It isn't even the churches. It's the smell. Modern people often underestimate just how much a place can be defined by its scent. Today, unpleasant smells are usually temporary. A garbage truck comes, a drain gets cleaned, air fresheners exist. Medieval Europe had none of those luxuries. Almost every town carried a permanent mixture of wood smoke, animal manure, spoiled food, wet leather, muddy streets, human waste and cooking fires. Imagine several hundred people sharing the same space with pigs, chickens, goats, horses and cows. Now imagine almost nobody possessing modern plumbing. Of course, everyone became used to it. Humans adapt surprisingly well, which is fortunate because they didn't really have another option. You might also notice that the streets are not paved with neat stones everywhere. Many roads are simply packed dirt. During dry weather, they're dusty. During rainy weather, they become thick rivers of mud that happily swallow shoes. Assuming, of course, you actually own shoes. Good leather footwear wasn't cheap. Many peasants repaired the same pair repeatedly until they looked less like shoes and more like exhausted pieces of leather, barely holding a conversation with each other. Now suppose you've somehow arrived as an ordinary villager. Congratulations. You've avoided becoming nobility, which means nobody is plotting to marry you off for political reasons before you're old enough to complain. Unfortunately, you've also inherited an entirely different collection of problems. Your house probably consists of one room. That single room serves as kitchen, bedroom, dining room, workshop, storage area, and sometimes barn. Privacy is practically a mythical creature. Entire families sleep together. Children, parents, grandparents, and occasionally a few animals all occupy the same general space. The cow isn't exactly a pet. It's simply warmer inside than outside. During winter, every little bit of warmth matters. The walls are made from timber, woven branches, and clay. The roof is covered with thatch. It looks charming in modern documentaries filmed during golden sunsets. It looks considerably less charming when rain begins leaking through it for the third consecutive day. Inside, smoke from the central fire slowly curls upward toward a hole in the roof. Some escapes, some doesn't. Generations of medieval families spent years inhaling smoke indoors because chimneys were still relatively uncommon in many ordinary homes. Your lungs weren't thrilled about this arrangement, but once again, alternatives were limited. Let's talk about your bed. Actually, let's lower expectations slightly. You're probably sleeping on a sack stuffed with straw. Fresh straw is reasonably comfortable. Old straw slowly becomes home to insects, fleas, lice, and various tiny creatures that consider your mattress premium real estate. Changing bedding frequently wasn't always practical, so your nightly roommates often included far more legs than the average family could count. Pleasant dreams. Morning begins early. Very early. There are no alarms. Roosters perform that job with absolute confidence. You wake because sunlight enters the room, or because somebody else is already preparing for work. Sleeping late isn't really encouraged when survival depends on daylight. Electric lights won't be invented for several centuries. Candles exist. They're expensive. Most ordinary people save them whenever possible, which means daylight becomes incredibly valuable. Breakfast isn't exactly a feast. Perhaps coarse bread, maybe some porridge. If you're fortunate, cheese. If you're especially fortunate, yesterday's leftovers. Coffee? Not yet. Tea? Not for most Europeans. Hot chocolate? That won't arrive for quite some time. Instead, many people drink ale, not because everyone wants to begin the morning with an enthusiastic celebration. The alcohol content is often quite low, and brewing sometimes produces beverages safer than questionable water supplies. It's less glamorous than it sounds. You're not beginning every day at a medieval tavern. You're simply trying to avoid becoming violently ill. Speaking of illness, let's appreciate something wonderfully boring. Soap. Modern soap quietly performs miracles every single day without asking for applause. In medieval Europe, soap existed, but wasn't always widely available or consistently used by everyone, depending on region, wealth, and time period. People certainly washed. Contrary to popular myths, medieval people did not universally avoid bathing. Many bathed whenever possible. Public bathhouses operated in numerous towns during different periods. Rivers were used. Wooden tubs appeared inside homes. The problem wasn't ignorance. The problem was convenience. Heating enough water for an entire bath required significant effort. Firewood needed collecting. Water needed carrying. Everything demanded physical labor. So cleanliness became a question of available resources rather than simple habit. Meanwhile, lice remained extremely common. Nobody particularly liked them. They simply struggled to eliminate them completely. Imagine finally removing every insect from your hair only to sleep beside 3 relatives who still have plenty. The insects viewed this as excellent networking opportunities. Your clothing doesn't change much either. Most people own very few outfits, perhaps one for everyday work, another for special occasions if they're fortunate. Clothing takes enormous amounts of labor to produce. Someone raises sheep, someone shears them, someone spins wool into thread, someone weaves cloth, someone sews garments by hand. Fast fashion would sound like wizardry. Naturally, people repair clothing again and again. Patches become badges of practicality. Nothing gets thrown away if it can survive one more season. Now let's head outside. You're working today, and next tomorrow, the day after, and probably the day after that too. Agriculture dominates daily life. Fields demand constant attention. Ploughing, planting, weeding, harvesting, repairing fences, caring for livestock. Every season introduces another endless list of tasks. Modern gym memberships would seem deeply confusing. Why voluntarily lift heavy things indoors when life already requires lifting heavy things outdoors from sunrise until sunset? Your hands become rough. Your back aches. Your shoulders protest. And yet work continues because crops refuse to grow out of sympathy. Weather controls nearly everything. Too much rain destroys harvests. Too little rain destroys harvests. Unexpected frost destroys harvests. Insects destroy harvests. Plant disease destroys harvests. Notice a recurring theme. Food security is remarkably fragile. One poor harvest can ripple through an entire region. People don't simply worry about rising grocery prices. They worry whether groceries will exist at all. Bread forms the foundation of many diets. Its quality depends heavily upon wealth. The wealthy enjoy lighter wheat bread. Poorer families often eat darker breads made from rye, barley, oats, or mixed grains. Sometimes flour contains tiny bits of grit from grinding stones. Over years, this slowly wears down teeth. Dentists, unfortunately, aren't waiting around the corner. A toothache may become an unforgettable companion. If infection develops, well, let's just say modern antibiotics deserve far more appreciation than they usually receive. Even simple injuries carry frightening risks. A small cut while chopping wood, a blister from working fields, a scrape from repairing fences. Today, these barely interrupt our routines. 800 years ago, infection constantly lurked nearby. Nobody understood bacteria. People certainly recognized illness. They simply lacked the scientific explanations we now take for granted. Doctors worked with the best knowledge available. Unfortunately, that knowledge occasionally included balancing mysterious bodily humors or recommending treatments that help optimism more than patience. To be fair, medicine wasn't entirely ineffective. Many herbal remedies genuinely contained useful properties. Experienced healers learned through observation over generations. Some treatments worked surprisingly well. Others, perhaps it's kinder not to evaluate them too closely. Let's slowly wander toward the village church. Whether deeply religious or not, nearly everyone lives within a society shaped by faith. Church bells organize time. Religious festivals structure the calendar. Saints' feast days interrupt ordinary routines. The local priest becomes one of the few educated figures many villagers regularly encounter. Books remain astonishingly rare. Each manuscript requires months of careful copying by hand. Printing presses have yet to revolutionize information. Knowledge travels slowly, very slowly. Rumors, however, move at breathtaking speed. Human nature, it seems, has always been wonderfully consistent. One traveler tells another. One merchant repeats the story. Soon, an entire village confidently discusses events that happened hundreds of miles away with remarkable certainty, despite possessing almost no reliable information. Some things never change. And as evening slowly settles over the village, the day's work finally comes to an end. The fire is stirred back to life. A simple meal is shared. The room grows darker. Outside, the world becomes almost completely black, broken only by moonlight, scattered stars, and the occasional flicker of a distant window. Without electric light, night feels truly like night. The world grows quieter. Tomorrow will look very much like today. There will be more work, more mud, more smoke, more bread. Hopefully enough harvest to survive another season. Not a glamorous existence, not an easy one. But for millions of ordinary medieval people, this wasn't history. It was simply life. And as we continue drifting through the centuries together, we'll discover that surviving everyday village life was only the beginning. Because once we leave the peasants behind and wander into castles, monasteries, and royal courts, we'll find that wealth solved some problems, while inventing a surprising number of entirely new ones. So without rushing anywhere at all, we'll quietly continue our journey in part 2.